Hey everybody, hope you all enjoyed your Labor Day weekend last weekend, but it's back to business this week. So Mike's on the call. He's here. He's in the office. But I'll be doing the call today. And so first thing I wanted to start with is let's see if I can get my slideshow working. 5-minute moneymaker. So the 5-minute moneymaker and the 5Q breakdown are things that you guys get every week, and they're tools for you to use. These are articles or tapes or reviews that should help you with the people that you're meeting with that week or the following week. So make sure you're taking a look at these and taking the time to really think about how you can kind of implement these things into your practice. This week's 5-minute moneymaker was about how we're all familiar with the risks that flooding can pose to a home. But are we flood proofing our investments as well? And so there's an article there, a link there to Think Advisor, and just something to think about. These things are things that maybe you can use with clients, but even if you don't use them with clients, just having them in the back of your mind, knowing the issues, being up to speed with everything that's going on out there, I think really helps you when you're sitting across from people. Today, kind of what I want to do is all of you know, or all of you probably know, that when you first come on, I walk you through the software, you talk to Mike, and then you come back to me and we go through the FIA presentation. And a lot of times when I'm role playing the FIA presentation with all of you, I notice a few mistakes that everybody's making. Now, they're not always things that they're doing wrong. Sometimes they're things that they could be doing better. And I think today, as the pointer, I kind of want to look at something that everybody could be doing better. I don't see people doing it wrong. I just don't see them doing it as well as they could. So I kind of want to start with a quick look at that. And then I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about the 21-point checklist meeting. Then I kind of want to bring everything full circle and finish with an idea that's kind of the foundation of everything that we do when we present solutions to people. So let me start with the FIA presentation. And again, it's not anything that anybody's doing wrong as much as something that they could be doing better. So I'm going to throw out a question, and I want as many responses as I can get just to get an idea of what everybody's thinking. So the question that I have is this: why should retired people add FIAs to their portfolio? What's the reason that the people that we sit across from, people that are 55 and older, should add an FIA to their portfolio? And let's see how many answers we can get. Now I'm going to talk a little bit as you're typing in answers, and I see some coming in right now, and we'll talk about that. It's an important question because it's that question that prospects have to be able to answer for themselves before they'll pull the trigger on anything. So for them to buy an FIA, they need to be able to ask themselves and answer for themselves, why should I add this to my portfolio? And so we have an opportunity when we're sitting across from them to hear what their answer is as they're working it out loud right in front of us. And so that's our job, to make sure that we're getting them to answer that question out loud right there in front of us. Okay? And so we have to be super clear on what we think the answer is, because they're not going to think anything different than us. If I think the answer is X, they're going to think the answer is X when all is said and done. If I think the answer is Y, they're going to think the answer is Y when all is said and done. So we have to be super clear on what we think is the answer to that question. Why should people add FIAs to their portfolio? Now, I've got a lot of answers. So I'm just going to kind of read through some of these quickly, and I'm not going to name anybody, but I get security, stability, safety, protection of assets, safeties, guarantees, lifetime income. It's never the worst place to be. It's the best place for their safe money, preservation, steady stream of income. So that's the vast majority. Now answers are still coming in, but that gives you a flavor. Safety, dependable income, has to be, it's done better than the market over the last 20 years, protection from losses. So we're getting a lot of answers, and I think they all kind of fall into that category of Well, they're safe and they're stable, and you don't have to worry about market volatility. So here's the thing that I want to ask you guys. Is a CD safe? I think everybody would agree that a CD is safe. Is a CD stable? I think everybody would agree that a CD is stable. Does a CD protect you from market volatility? I think everybody would agree that a CD would protect you from market volatility. Does the CD provide reliable income? I think everybody would agree that while it's not a lot, yeah, a CD, if you're just going to use the interest, maybe ladder them, could provide at least reliable income. Maybe not a lot of income, but reliable income. So the question becomes, if a CD is safe, if a CD is stable, if a CD protects you from market downturn, and a CD protects you or can provide you reliable, stable income, what makes an FIA different than a CD? So let me see if I can get some answers to that. So all the things we said, safe, stable, protect you from downturns, can't lose money, reliable, predictable income, are all true of a CD. So what makes a CD different than an FIA? And let me scroll down and see what the answers are. Liquidity, more upside, potential growth, higher returns. So everybody's getting it. CDs don't give you the returns that FIAs give you. But now notice that when I first asked that question, everybody said overwhelmingly, oh, the reason you should have an FIA is it's safe. The reason you should have an FIA is it's stable. The reason you should have an FIA is because it provides reliable income. The reason you should have an FIA is because it protects you from market downturns. And so when you look at the slide that we use in the FIA presentation, this slide is really kind of the go-to slide. It happens in the middle of the presentation. And again, at the end, when we're kind of summing everything up, this is the slide that gives them the answer to why should people add FIAs to their portfolio. The answer is they should add FIAs to their portfolio because they're safe investments with greater upside potential than any other safe alternative out there. But if all we're going to do is tell people that the reason that they should have them is because they're safe, they're stable, protect you from market downturns, and provide reliable income, well, a CD does all of those things. And look, a CD was the number one place to be 2 out of 3 times. So why would I want the number 2 place to be when I could have the number 1 place to be? And we all know the answer is greater upside potential. But when I role play that with you guys, you're not getting me to say that. You're getting me to say it's safe. You're getting me to say that it's stable. You're getting me to say that possibility for income. You're getting me to say that it protects me from downturns. But what you're not getting me to say is there's greater upside. And if you don't do that, they're going to be torn about whether or not they want to add an FIA to their portfolio. Because what they're going to think is it's safe, it's stable, it's reliable and predictable, and protects you from downturns like a CD. But I don't know if I want to put my money in something that's going to give me those low rates of return when the market seems to be doing so well. Now, if they were to say that in front of us, we would know immediately what to do. We would get on their side and we would say, yep, you're exactly right. You don't know if you want to put yourself in something that's not going to give you a lot of return when the market may still have a lot of juice left in it. We don't know, but it might. And then we question them and get them to tell us that, but can you get 42% of the upside in a CD? Can you earn 6-7% in a CD? We have to be able to do that when they're sitting there right there in front of us. It's not something that you guys are doing wrong, because there are points in the presentation where you do say, hey, we're getting at least, we're doing better than the market did over the last 20 years. There are slides in the presentation before this slide where we're getting people to acknowledge that. But it's as if we leave that behind and say, well, this is a separate point, and this is the real point that I want you to get. So guess what? They go home and they remember. This is the slide that came up twice. This is the slide that you make such a big deal of. These are the slides that you probably spend the most time on. So guess what? This is the slide that they remember. This is the slide that they tend to base their decision on. And if we're not getting people to say right here that it's safe, stable, predictable income, protect you from market losses, as well as give you more upside than you could get in any other safe investment, then we're going to struggle. And so make sure that you're not, the presentation is designed to make one big point. And we make all the points separately, and then we tie them together in a nice little bow with this slide right here. Make sure you're tying all the points together in a nice little bow, and not just using this slide to make the point that, hey, this is a really safe investment that you won't have to worry about losing money. That sounds like a CD. And I'm not saying people are confused and thinking that the Warren Buffett investment is a CD. They don't. They're not confused by that. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, hey, it's a lot like a CD. And so in their mind, it's safe, it's stable, protects you from downside, and doesn't earn a lot of money. And that's why they have to think about it. That's why they're not sure. That's why they only want to do it with a little, not a lot. Now, if you're getting people to move their money, and the problem that you're having is they want to move more than half their money into a Warren Buffett investment, then guess what? You're doing it right. But if you're doing this and you're saying, well, people are still being hesitant, and they still only want to throw me a little, and they just seem like they're not sure, and they want to think it over and meet again, then guess what the problem is? They think it's a great safe investment. They're just not sure that there's a lot of upside there, and they're not sure that now is the time to be taking money out of the market and putting it into something that doesn't earn a whole lot. I'm not saying that that's, I wonder if that's what gets communicated when I ask that question, why should people put their money in an FIA? All the answers were it's safe, it protects you from the downside, it's stable, you can get income, it's protection, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. And if that's what we're thinking in our mind, then there's no way that the client's going to walk away after talking to us for an hour. If that's our answer, then that's going to be their answer, and that's only one part of the equation, and that's not going to be good enough. So make sure you're making both points, and that when you're kind of summing everything up with this slide, that you're hearing both things come out of their mouth. If you don't try and get both things, then both things aren't on the top of their mind, and they're not going to be basing their decision on both things. They're going to be basing their decision on the one thing, which is the one thing that you told me. It's safe, it's stable, protects you from market downturn. And when the Dow's at 25, 26,000, that might not be good enough. Okay. So again, not everybody's having that problem, but I see a lot of people with that problem. And I just want to make you aware that you have to get them to say both things, not just one thing, then the other thing, and then the safety thing, back to the safety thing again at this slide. You have to get them to say it's safe, it's got a lot of potential for growth. And when you get to this slide, they have to be able to tie the two together and say it's safe with a lot of potential for growth. I get it. Okay. So next thing, I want to take a step back and look at the 21-point checklist meeting for a second. What's the purpose of the 21-point checklist meeting? And I want to see if we can get a lot of answers to that question too. Now, when I take you through the software, I ask you this question as well. So I'm hoping to see a lot of right answers. What are we trying to get people to talk about or understand or see from the 21-point checklist? And now I'm getting good answers. So people are saying, well, I want them to fire their advisor. I want them to discredit their broker. I want them to see that their advisor is screwing them. I want them to leave their advisor. Those are all right answers. Okay, so those are good. That's good. So let me take a look at this. Let's pull this 21-point checklist meeting up. When you look at these things, and this isn't all 21, this is just a partial list, but when you think about the 21-point checklist, what is it about these things that makes them want to fire their advisor, or say that their advisor is screwing them, or say that they should leave him, and that you're not just about the money? What is it about these things that make them come to that conclusion? And that, again, is a very important question, because whatever you think the answer to that question is, that's what they're going to think the answer to that question is. They're not going to magically come to some other conclusion than you. And so here's the answers that I get when I ask that question. Well, the reason they should leave their advisor, what it is about these things that makes them think that they should leave their advisor, is they realize that he didn't cover any of this. He didn't talk about any of it. So let me read you what I'm hearing. They weren't told, wasn't discussed before, but it should be, wasn't covered at all. Another, they weren't told. They were not told. The advisor doesn't do or talk about these things. The broker did not tell them or show them. The advisors, again, did not talk about these things. Their guide didn't cover it. That's a problem. That's a problem. Because if all they think is, you know what, my guy doesn't cover these things, my goodness, that they're going to go back and say, hey, you better cover these things. I just went and talked to Jeff, and he said you're not covering these things, and I'm convinced that you're not. Now you start covering these things or else. And what does he say? Oh, no, I mean, yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah, I'm going to cover all these things with you. In fact, why don't we get together next week and start to go through these one by one? Is that what you want? Do you want them to go back to their guy and confront him about not covering these things? Do you want them to go back to their guy at all? See, when I walk you through the software, I always tell you, you have to be very careful and conscious about how you go through this list. Because if all you do is say, hey, look at this. This is a list of things that he didn't do. And they're important. They may not look important at first glance, but I think what you're going to see is these are the kinds of things that can jump out of the grass and bite you in the butt. And what happens if you get good at that, what I mean by getting good at that is using the motivational interviewing to get and ask them lots of open-ended questions, getting them to say out loud in their own words, hey, you know what? My guy's not covering these things. And they're important. They could jump out of the grass and bite me in the butt. They'll say that. If you make it a point to ask open-ended questions to get them to say that, they will say that. You'll get to a point, you'll get good enough to the point where they will say that, but they won't move money. The reason they won't move money is, you know, when I'm at the class, every time we have a class, this question inevitably comes up. There's a comment, something like this. It goes, hey, I love this 21-point checklist that you guys have put together. Now, I cover these things, not all of them, but some of them I do cover with my clients, but some of them, they're brand new. I have no idea what they are. So here's my question. How long is this going to take me to learn? And we always tell people, oh, don't worry, you'll learn it fast. The reason you'll learn it fast is, see that list? That's kindergarten for financial advisors. It's super easy stuff, so you'll pick it up quick. That's the good news. It's super easy. It's kindergarten for financial advisors. Are you ready for the bad news? The bad news is it's super easy and it's kindergarten for financial advisors. And because it's super easy and it's kindergarten for financial advisors, everybody can do it. I can do it. You can do it. The guy down the street from me can do it. The guy down the street from you can do it. The guy that they're working with right now can do it. And if they don't have a guy, they're do-it-yourselfers, kind of managing their own portfolio. Most of this stuff is so easy. They can fix it on their own without help. See, the problem before was they didn't know it wasn't getting done. And they didn't know how important it was, how it could jump out of the grass and bite them in the butt. But now that you've done such a great job getting them to discover in their own words that it's not getting done, and it could jump out of the grass and bite us in the butt, guess what they'll do with that information? They'll take it back to him. They'll say, hey, this stuff we met with Jeff, this stuff could jump out of the grass and bite us in the butt. We're afraid it's not getting done. What gives? And he's going to look at that list and say, oh, this is all stuff I can do for you. Whoa, but you haven't been doing it. I know. And I promise, cross my heart, hope to die, I'm going to take care of it and make sure that it's permanently fixed. Well, you better, because if you don't, we're leaving. I mean, you're going to take care of this, right? Oh, yeah, I'm going to take care of it. All right. Well, honey, go ahead and call Jeff and tell him we don't need to come to that meeting next week. That's what happens if all you think this is about is getting them to acknowledge that their guy didn't cover these things. And they're important. They could jump out of the grass and bite you in the butt. What we have to do is get them to take it one step further and tell us why he didn't cover them. The fact that he didn't cover them, that's only step 1 of 2. That's just like that FIA presentation we just looked at. If you only do step 1, you're only going to get half-ass results. If you want all the results, you're going to have to do both steps. You're going to have to say that FIAs are safe and they have a lot of upside potential. If you want to have success at the 21-point checklist meeting, you're going to have to get them to say this stuff wasn't covered, and the reason he didn't cover it was, sometimes with the stuff at the top, they'll say, oh, the reason it wasn't covered was because he's not an attorney or a doctor. He didn't go through the power of attorney and the medical power of attorney because he doesn't know about that stuff. And any advisor who doesn't know about that stuff isn't a good advisor. He didn't cover the stuff in the middle, the titling and the beneficiaries, because, well, no, it isn't that he doesn't know what beneficiaries are. He must know what they are. I'm sure he does. It's probably just not high on his list of priorities. He doesn't care. So sometimes he doesn't cover some of the things because he doesn't know about them. Sometimes he doesn't cover some of the things because he doesn't care about them. Unnecessary account fees. He knows what fees are. Come on. Everybody will say he knows what fees are, and he cares, or at least he better. Why didn't he cover those? I'm not sure. But as I'm working it out loud and right here in front of you, answering your open-ended questions, I'm starting to think he hid it on purpose. He knew if I saw it, I wouldn't work with him, and all he really cared about was bringing me on as a client so he could make money. So sometimes he doesn't cover those things because he doesn't know about them. Sometimes he doesn't cover them because he doesn't care about them. Sometimes he's hiding things on purpose. But notice if they start saying he's hiding things on purpose, what's the only fix for that? Get a new guy. That's the only reason they leave. They don't leave because he didn't cover them. They don't leave because they could jump out of the grass and bite him in the butt. They leave because he hid things on purpose. And we have to know when we're in a meeting sitting across from somebody, it's not my job to get them to say this stuff wasn't covered. They may say that, but that's not the Holy Grail. It's not my job to get him to say, oh, look at all the things I do that he doesn't. That I don't care if they say that, but I have to understand that's not the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is He didn't cover them because he doesn't care and he's hiding them on purpose. If they don't say both things, your chances at getting them as a client are 50-50 at best. I'm not saying you can't get somebody by getting them to say, hey, he doesn't cover these things and they could jump out of the grass and bite me in the butt, but it is by no means guaranteed. I think most of the time, if that's all you get them to say, they say, okay, it's not being covered. They could bite us in the butt. How much per hour for you to cover them? If you've ever heard that, then you know what the problem is. Or they might say, hey, okay, well, let's see what you have to offer. If you've ever heard that, then you know what the problem is. Because what you should hear is, you know what? I'm not working with him anymore. Now, that doesn't mean they're working with you, but at least they're leaving him. And now their options are go to the phone book and find another advisor or see what you have. If what you have looks decent, well, then we'll do that. So make sure that you're using all of these points on that checklist to get them to say, he didn't cover that because he was hiding it on purpose, or because he doesn't care about me or my family, he only cares about himself, or because he doesn't take the time to learn about those things, and any advisor who wouldn't learn about those things is not a good advisor. Those are the things that you really have to hear. So what I want to kind of do is zoom in on one of the talking points that we use to get them to say, hey, he's doing this on purpose. He's hiding things from me on purpose. And the one topic that I kind of want to look at and zoom in on is unnecessary account fees. Now, if you were to go out to the website and click on the 21-point checklist meeting and look at the tutorials for unnecessary account fees, you would see that there are a lot of ways to talk about fees depending on what they have. There's a script there for variable annuities. There's a script there for managed money. There's a script there for mutual funds, REITs. There's a script there if they're a do-it-yourselfer. So fees is one of those topics where you kind of have to look at what they have. I'll tell you, 99% of the time, what's going to happen when somebody walks in and you look at their statements, they're going to have a hodgepodge. They're going to have some stocks. They're going to have some mutual funds. They're going to have some C shares, some A shares. They might have a REIT. They might have a variable annuity. You might see all of these things in a portfolio, or you might see only one, or you might see only two. I mean, we're not going to know until we see. And so basically, there are a lot of ways that I would talk about fees, and my strategy and your strategy should be to kind of look at the cards that you're dealt to see what's in your hand. And what I mean by that is you look at the statement and you say, well, okay, they've got variable annuities and they've got mutual funds. So I'm going to be doing the variable annuity script, and I'm probably going to be doing the mutual fund script. They could have a lot of different things. But basically what I do is I look at what they have, I look at the scripts that would apply to their situation, and I kind of rank them in order for the biggest bang for the buck. I ask myself, well, do I have a script here that really makes a case better than maybe some of the others that he hid this on purpose? I'll tell you, myself, I love the variable annuity script. To me, that's the strongest script that we have when it comes to fees. I love that script. Everybody that goes through it says, you know what? He hid that insurance expense from me on purpose. He knew if I saw that, I would not have done this. And the only reason he wanted me to do it was because he wanted to make more money. Everybody says that. But does everybody have a variable annuity? No. And so I look at the scripts. There are strengths and weaknesses in every one, but they can all work. But some I like better than others because I know them better, or I've had more success with them, or I just feel more comfortable with them. Whatever the reason, I rank the scripts in order. And then I go through the top two. Whatever fees are in their portfolio, I take the 2 strongest scripts, and those are the ones I use and I cover in the meeting. Now the question becomes, well, what if there are more than 2? What if they have REITs, variable annuities, mutual funds, and managed money? That's 4. Wouldn't I do all 4 scripts? I don't think there's anything wrong with doing all 4 scripts, but I think I would probably stick to 2. Do I need to cover all the fees for all of the investments? If I say, for example, that they have $14,823 in unneeded fees, do I need to make sure that I cover where every dollar of that $14,823 is coming from? No. What if $6,000 of it is coming from the variable annuity and $3,000 of it is coming from the managed money? And those are the 3 that I covered, meaning I've accounted for $9,000 of the $14,823. Do I still have to account for the other $6,823? The answer is no. Well, I take that back. The answer is yes, if you want to say, hey, he didn't cover all $14,823 with you. The answer is no if all you're trying to do is get him to say, hey, there's stuff he hid from me and he did it on purpose. You have to be focused. You have to know what you're there to do. You're there to get them to say he hid stuff from me on purpose, not, oh, gee, there's $14,000 in fees. I had no idea it was that high. If all you do is get them to say, oh, gee, I didn't realize I had those many fees. I didn't realize they were that high. Then there's 100% chance they still may meet with you for the solutions meeting, but there's 100% chance that in addition to that, they're going to go back to their guy and say, gee, I'm paying $14,823 in fees. I had no idea it was that high. What can we do to reduce that? And now you're in a push me, pull you. They're going to listen to both of you and weigh your presentations and decide what to do. But I'll tell you, possession is 9/10 of the law. They're 90% more likely to stay with him, which means you still have a 10% chance. I'm not saying you can't get it. I'm just saying it's low. So I only use the top 2 because I'm not trying to account for every dollar in fees and say, oh, gee, look how much it is. I'm trying to get them to say, hey, that guy hid this from me and he did it on purpose. And I use the 2 that I think will give me the biggest bang for the buck. Now, the thing I kind of want to zero in on today and look at in a little bit more detail is, what if they have no load funds? And what I mean by no load funds is this. A lot of times you'll find somebody who's got just all Vanguard funds or all Fidelity funds or all T. Rowe Price. I mean, they don't have loads. There's not A shares, B shares, and C shares necessarily. They're no load funds. What would I do if I walked across somebody who I looked at their statements and all they had was no load funds? Oh, let me do this. Well, I want to talk to you about how I would cover that. So keeping in mind my goal being to get them to say, this wasn't covered with me because he didn't want me to know about it. What about no load funds might their advisor not have talked about? So let me see if I can get some ideas from you guys. What might they not have told their clients about no load funds because they didn't want them to know? They were hiding it on purpose. Now let me see if I can see what some of these, the fees go up when the value goes up. That's managed money, internal fees, management fees, transaction costs, young managers. Those are all pretty decent answers. I mean, those aren't bad answers. Now, I'm getting some answers that are like, oh, they're B shares or they have a lot of internal fees, and what we want to do is make sure that we're When I talk about no load funds, the problem that I'm running across, or the thing that I'm worried about, is there aren't a lot of internal fees. There aren't B shares in no load funds. I don't have any of those things as ammunition. And so what I want to make sure that I do is I do have something for ammunition, and I'm getting some good answers. I'm getting answers like, well, turnover, that's one. Tenure, that's another. Um, Risk reward, the fact that it's not getting the return that you would expect from the amount of risk. And so those are all good things. I think you're all identifying the fact that I'm going to have to use something other than the internal fees inside of the fund in order to kind of poke holes in a no-load fund. And I think the strongest card that you have, risk reward, is something that I will cover under the risk reward topic. Tenure is something that I will cover when I cover the tenure topic. But if you looked at the 21-point checklist and you kind of flip through it, you'll notice that right behind the fees section, and when you talk about fees inside of a no-load fund, you're going to get a number. The software is going to calculate a number for unnecessary fees, but it's going to be low. It's going to be small. And you're going to wonder, is this going to be enough to get them to move? It's not if all you're going to do is compete on a number. But right behind that page, it's going to start to talk about turnover costs. So turnover is going to be kind of my key script that I use when I'm going through no load funds. Okay, so I'm going to be covering turnover. And so I just want to walk you through, these are the crib notes for the turnover script, or for the turnover talk that I have with people. And so you guys can go back, and I'm not going to necessarily go through I'll talk about every point, but I want to make sure that you know that anything that we talk about is on the website, that you don't have to memorize this here on the fly, or try and figure it out as we're going through it here quickly. Anything that we do
and
here,
Jeff,
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, we had a question in here that said, what if it's all no-load index funds? Well, obviously, then the fees are basically non-existent or minuscule. The turnover is going to be minuscule. So let's see if anybody knows, if they have all of their money in no-load index funds. First of all, Jeff, how often do you see that?
You know what? I can't even think any time in the last year that I've actually seen that. Have I seen no-load index funds? Yes. Have I seen that be the entire portfolio? No.
Okay. So let's just say the worst case scenario, they had all their funds in no-load index funds. That means they're probably a do-it-yourselfer, because I sure in hell hope somebody isn't charging them fees to be in indexes. So if they're a do-it-yourselfer, what's our fallback when they have all of their money in index funds? And really with the do-it-yourselfers as a whole. Well, then that's good that we know that. So we fall back on, well, yeah, I would agree. Tom says 50-50, but we fall back on how much information is available for stocks. If somebody was interested in stocks, how much information is available to them? Unlimited. And how fun is it for stock investors to peruse the stock information? You know, do-it-yourselfers. Yeah, they love it. It's their hobby. Now, how much information is available for bonds? Yeah, almost nothing. So we fall back on saying, hey, obviously you're a genius when it comes to stocks, because you're going to convince anybody's not a genius when it comes to stocks. But you can't. It's hard to make decisions no matter how smart you are, if information's not available, and you don't have information available for the guaranteed part of your portfolio, the bond part of the portfolio. So you take care of stocks, I'll handle the bonds for you. So does that make sense? So I'm sorry to jump in there, Jeff, but that's I knew some people were thinking, well, what if they have an index fund? That's how we had an index fund. We get the guaranteed portfolio. Yeah. So sorry about that.
And that's exactly right. When you're dealing with people that have no load funds, they're almost always. A lot of people would think, well, okay, this turnover talk, that it's not necessarily the sexiest or strongest talk. And what if all they have is no load funds that are indexes, then what? Well, again, you're dealing mostly with do-it-yourselfers when you run across a portfolio like that. And so if all they have is no load index funds, guess what you get to do? Say, you're doing a great job with the equities. How about let me take over the bonds? What do you do if they have indexes but other things as well, and you're talking about turnover with those other things? Well, again, you might think that that's not necessarily the strongest or the sexiest script in the fees portfolio of scripts, and it's not. But remember, you're dealing with do-it-yourselfers. And so if you're dealing with somebody who has a broker, you're going to run into more than no load funds. Otherwise, he's not making any money. He's not going to put his clients in all no load funds. Not without charging them something. We could be talking about managed money. But again, because we're dealing with Vanguard or Fidelity, how hard does Vanguard or Fidelity fight to keep their $130,000 portfolio? How hard would Vanguard or Fidelity fight to keep their $300,000 portfolio? How hard would Vanguard or Fidelity fight to keep their $600,000 portfolio? $600,000 to Vanguard or Fidelity is a drop in the bucket. They don't care. They're going to let it go. So while it's difficult to get all the money from a do-it-yourselfer because they like this, it's their hobby, it's easy to get some of the money. Either some of the money because Vanguard and Fidelity aren't discussing the turnover with them because, you know, you're a small fish in a big sea and they really don't care about you, or because, hey, you're doing a great job with the equity, but what about the bonds? How much information are you able to gather about the bonds? So either way, it works. You run across no load funds, you're going to want to use turnover or the fact that you can take over the bonds. Okay? But always our target there is to make sure they tell us, hey, I didn't get this information because if it's a guy, he hid it from me. If it's Vanguard or Fidelity, it's because, well, they don't care about me. I'm nobody to them. I'm just a number. They have thousands and thousands of clients, and my $320,000 is nothing to them. I'm on my own when it comes to this stuff. And then they think, you know what, I'm on my own when it comes to the turnover. I'm on my own when it comes to the risk reward. I'm on my own when it comes to the tenure. I'm on my own when it comes to the power of attorney. I'm on my own when it comes to the beneficiaries. I'm on my own when it comes to the titling. Hey, maybe I shouldn't have all my money at Fidelity. Maybe I should have somebody in my corner. If I was to kind of maybe bring you on as a guy in my corner, what would have to happen? How would all that work? That's how you know you're doing it right. Last thing I want to cover, make sure you're on target, that we're talking about the guy and not just the problem. The guy is the problem. We have to make sure they're putting two and two together and saying the problem is the guy is the problem. If they can't say that, we're not doing it right. And when we run across no load funds, using turnover or the fact that you can handle the bond portfolio is the thing I use to get them to say, my guy is the problem. It's not the problem itself, or Fidelity or Vanguard is the problem. Okay. Last, I kind of want to look at, once they say that, you know what, my guy is the problem, or Fidelity or Vanguard is the problem, what should they want to do at that point? Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, they should want to move to me. Now, they may say that, but at the very least, they should say what? I want to leave my guy, or I want to move from Fidelity. And at that point, we're going to offer them solutions or alternatives. And so what I want to do is kind of quickly bring things full circle back to that solutions meeting or that implementation meeting, and just give you an overview of why we recommend what we recommend. And so to give you some context, I want to walk you through something in physics called the three-body problem. And what the three-body problem is this. You have three bodies, whether they're planets or think the sun and the moon and the earth. Or a lot of times physicists will say, oh, electrons in an atom. Okay, so either way, you have three bodies. They're close enough to each other that they act on each other gravitationally. Now, here's what you know. You know their exact location right this second. You know where they're at. You know how big they are, and you know what their mass is and what their gravitational pull is. You also know how fast they're moving. So the challenge is to calculate the position of each body at some point in the future. If I know where it's at, and I know how big it is and what its gravitational pull is, and I know how fast it's moving, what I want to know is where will it be on September 15th? Where were those three? What will be the position of those three bodies on September 15th? That's the challenge, to calculate their position. So here's the math that's required to figure that out. Now, you or I, we are not going to be able to solve this problem. But a physicist or an astrophysicist could, right? No, it can't be solved. See, the problem was posed by mathematicians in the late 1600s, again, like we talked about, to kind of figure out if we could calculate the position of the sun relative to the moon and the earth, or the earth and with relative to the sun and the moon. Could we do that? And in the 300 years, the 300 plus years between then and now, no one's been able to solve it. They've decided it's unsolvable. Whoa, but we have supercomputers. Why don't we just plug in the information to supercomputers? And what they found when they use supercomputers is the closest we can come are the probabilities of those locations, which ends up looking something like this. That jumbled mass. There's a red line, there's a pink line, there's a blue line, there's a green line, there's a white line. They all represent probabilities. That's the best we can closest we can come to solving that problem. Even with supercomputers, we can't solve that problem. You want to know why? Too many variables, too many unknowns. So here's the thing. How many more variables or unknowns are there in the stock market? We knew a lot when we were trying to figure out that problem. We knew the exact location, we knew the gravitational pull and the mass of the bodies, we knew their exact speeds, and we still can't solve that. There are just too many unknowns. And then we think we're going to look at something like the stock market and be able to nail it. There's going to be somebody that can figure it out. And guess what? There's somebody who's a stock analyst who would look at a graph like that and say, or this jumbled mass of lines, and see, I see the pattern. It's so obvious. When I tell it to you, you're just going to kick yourself because you're going to realize it's so obvious. You see it? Every year that the American League wins the World Series by 5 games or less, the stock market does great the following year. That's why you get stupid things like that. Oh, every year, if it's a year that ends in 0 and a Republican is elected to office, we're in for 2 years of good. The reason you get stupid stuff like that is because somebody's looking at this and saying, I see a pattern, but there's no pattern. There's no way to figure this out. So what we have to do is we have to think long term. We're not going to know what's going to happen on September 15th. We're not going to know where everything's going to be on October 31st. We're not even going to know on February 1st. We have to think long term. We have to have a long-term strategy. Okay, we'll put our faith in long term. And so when you think long term, there are really 4 kind of investment styles, I would call them, places that you can put your money. You give me any investment, I can put it in one of these boxes. The first box is strategic. That's what I would call buy and hold. The next box is tactical constrained. That will be people who move money. It's a managed investment, but they have limits. They'll say, well, you can only have maybe 20% in cash at any one time, or all the bonds have to be AAA rated. Tactical unconstrained would be a tactically managed investment, but it's unconstrained. There are no rules, just whatever you think is best at the time. And then last would be absolute return, things that cannot lose money and give you a return at the end of each and every year. So when you look at strategic, I want to show you some studies that have been done by academics. And by the way, who are the people we should trust? Should we trust Fidelity's research, or should we trust the research done by the academics? The academics. Why? Well, because they don't have any skin. They don't care. They're just giving you the facts. So with strategic, what that would be is you get all of the up of the market, but you get all of the down too. Whatever the market does, that's what you get. So this is looking at the market from 2000 to the end of 2018, from January 1st, 2000 to the end of December 31st on 2018. The purple line represents what the market did, all of the up and all of the down. Now, here's something that's going to be a little bit shocking. Over that 18-year period, the market is up 71%. It's been up more than that since the bottom of 2009. But if we go all the way back to 2002, for those 18 years, the market was up a grand total of 71%. Does that sound like somebody that's kicking butt on inflation? Over 18 years, 71%. It's keeping up with inflation, but are we kicking butt? No. I mean, you're getting a comfortable maybe 3% return. And how long are people retired for? Are people retired from 2009 to the end of 2018, or could they be retired from 2000 to 2018? Retirement's not a 6 or 7 year gig. It's an 18, 19, 20, hopefully 25 or 30-year deal. That's what we have to be looking at. So the purple line represents all of the up and all of the down. That would be strategic. Let's take a look at tactical, and I'm going to combine constrained and unconstrained. And here's the thing with tactical. The thing that they were trying to figure out is there a better way than all the up and all the down? Because what we've learned is the downs hurt you more than the ups help you. We use that example in our presentation when we say you start with $100, you lose 50%, you're down to 50. How much do you have to gain to get back to 100? You have to double your money 100%. Doesn't seem fair. You lose 50%, but you have to gain 100% to get back to ground even. The downs hurt you more than the ups help you. And when people realize that, there was kind of an idea that was born, and it's an idea that we're all familiar with some version of the idea. It's, hey, what if we could hedge or manipulate a portfolio? It would limit the up, but it would also limit the down. Wouldn't that be better? Well, let's see. Look at the green. You're not going to get all of the down. You're only going to get 50% of the down. And you're not going to get all of the up. You're only going to get 50% of the up. And look how it did compared to the purple line. It's better. It's above the purple line nearly all of the time. And even at the end, it might not be a lot above, but it's a little above. So half the up, but only half the down is better. Well, let's take a quick look at this absolute return strategy. And in that bucket are things that give you an absolute return. You can't lose money, CDs, savings accounts, money market accounts, stable value accounts. Well, what if there was an investment that was guaranteed not to lose, but also give you half the up? So instead of half the up and half the down, how about half the up and none of the down? What would that look like? Looks like that. That's what you go through with people in the FIA presentation. We're doing a lot better than the market, and it makes sense. So anybody that would say, well, I've got a money manager that might limit the upside a little bit, but limits the downside too. If you would choose that over an FIA, that's silly. When you could get half the upside and none of the downside, it's going to beat the pants off a tactical investment. We shouldn't even.
And Jeff, can I jump in for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
And that's for two reasons. One, the one that Jeff is pointing out now. What's the second reason, Guy? If your manager says that he can give you, he's going to protect you on the downside, but of course you won't get all the upside. What's the other problem with that?
Are you asking me?
David's got it.
Okay.
David's got it. Everybody's saying fees. Fees are sure they're a problem, but that's not the reason. The reason is, will you guarantee your house on that promise that he's going to give you half the, not as much of the upside, but he's going to protect you on the downside? Will you hand them your house if he doesn't do that? If you don't believe in it enough that you would hand over your house for that promise, then guess what you should not be telling your client? And guess what you should not believe in? That. So sorry, Jeff. So your reason is the real reason, but there's another reason as well.
Yeah. Now, half the up and no down is always going to be better than half the up and half the down, or some version of that. And so this FIA beats the pants off tactically managed investment. But what about strategic investments? Does it beat the pants off strategic investments? And the answer is yes, sometimes, and no others. It turns out that in a secular bull market, strategic would be better because there are the ups more than offset the downs. But in a secular kind of bear where you have ups and downs, like we've had between 2000 and 2018, where over those 18 years, we're really only averaging about 3% growth. This makes more sense. So a lot of the time, this makes more sense, but not all of the time, which is the reason why we recommend this. Put half your money in strategic, put the other half in this. That way you're covered. If we have a secular bull market, your strategic investments are going to beat the pants off everything. And if we have a secular bear, those absolute return FIAs are going to beat the pants off everything. We're going to be prepared for the good and the bad. We're going to be covered for both. The only thing you don't want to be is in any of these tactical boxes. So that's why we recommend a 50-50 portfolio. You should know that when you recommend a 50-50 portfolio, that is by far, according to the academics, the best portfolio that you can build. With what we know today, that's as good as it gets right there. All right. So again, we're all in the office. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to anybody, and hope you guys have a great week. Thanks, guys.
Good job, Jeff.